gathering of the Positive Education Consortium, and we're so happy that you're here. We're going to be gathering today to talk about the M in the Become model of Carl Rogers, which is motivation. But before we dive in there, I've been historically bringing us back to the previous conversation so that we're interweaving these threads of the tapestry and where we've been so that that can keep informing where we're going. And in our last conversation, we focused on how embedding positive psychology into a school environment can be very supportive of positive behavior integration systems and multi-tiered systems of support. And one of our colleagues, Kimberly Breen, brought friends of hers, colleagues of hers from Fruitvale in California, where they talked about the incredible work they're doing and how it's made a massive impact in their schools. Specifically, they used character strengths, and they talked about how this made a big change in their school culture and environment. So that's where we've been. And again, today we're going to be talking about motivation and intergenerational storytelling. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Roy Layton, who is going to be taking lead on our conversation today. Roy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And we take that baton. We're very happy to receive that baton from Kim and her extraordinary colleagues. And we will continue the same vein. Everything that we do is based on research and proof. We need to accept the fact that maybe when I started doing this work some 30 years ago, because I'm very old, we were really beginning to show the impact of this. Now there is so much evidence. There is so much evidence for why positive education is not only a nice to have, it's a need to have. So I'm going to start this storytelling experience, the power of intergenerational storytelling, strangely, with a story. So this is a story based on historical fact. And in the 13th century, north of the Yellow River in China, Genghis Khan brought his Mongol horde to invade China for the first time. There were 7,500 men, and they were extraordinary horsemen. But they encountered a powerful military might of China who had 15,000 men, incredible skills on the battlefield, and they had also the most powerful archers. And they blocked themselves in this large oblong, and there's no way that Genghis Khan and his soldiers could make any advance. In fact, what the Chinese army were doing, were just picking them off. So that evening in his tent, he spoke to his 10 generals, and they discussed throughout the night what they should do. Should they stay? Should they go? And when the sun came up, he asked them to put it to the vote. And 6 of them said they need to retire with honor. They need to leave, regroup, come back in a year or so's time and do it differently. But 4 of them said, we should just charge the archers. We should get our horse and our riders in between them and break up their blockage. And because Genghis Khan was a leader who understood the importance of the seen and the unseen, who understood the idea of myths and legends and the power of intuition, and also the fact that 4 is a much more powerful number than 6 in China. So they chose the 4, and history shows that they broke through the Chinese hordes and they won the gap. Now, during the course of this conversation, you're going to hear the number 4 several times. And I would like you to keep your ears out for that, open for that. But we're going to start with, and we've got the wonderful students, the pupils from St. Margaret's Primary School in Oldham. They've done pre-recorded some of the videos for us. And they're one of the schools that we've been working with on the Become model. I've been working with them for many years. And their whole ethos is based on global citizenship and the power of positive psychology. So let's see what the first student, who is going to tell us why it's important not only to have values, but to live them.
I would say that it's important to make the values part of everyday school life, not just something written on the wall. showing bravery, energy, creativity, openness, motivation, and empowerment. In our actions, in our actions helps everyone feel included and respected. When relationships come first, people work together better and can achieve their best. It also helps pupils feel more confident to share their ideas, ask for help when they need it, and support others around them. That's what makes a strong school community.
So the four things in terms of the stories and why stories are so important. Just a little bit of the theory. In his excellent book, Teaching us Storytelling, Kieran Egan says there are four stages of stories we should tell our children. Early childhood, which is mythic, so tell stories that are magical. Middle childhood, which is romantic, so tell stories that are legends. Adolescence tell is philosophic, so tell stories that are rational, pluralistic, and introduce ideas and people and places that they're outside their experience. And also adult, which is ironic and trans-rational. So what we've created here, and again, Nora, she's the intern and she has been absolutely brilliant. And this is our POS Ed library. We're beginning today. And so we're going to put the link into the chat. And at some point, maybe today or even later, pop in just one story or a book that you think fits in with those. So I kicked it off with the Little Red Riding Hood, The Sword in the Stone, Sophie's World, and The Shadow of the Wind, which is a brilliant book. But also we put in books that are linked to positive psychology. And the one that is a stimulus for the whole become process is Carl Rogers's on becoming a person. That is really at the heart of what we're doing here.
Roy,
So
I've got two questions if you don't mind.
yeah, sure.
First is, are you willing to share the slides? Is that okay?
Yeah. Slides are going to be sent and we can
Okay.
pop them in straight away, but they'll also be sent into people should they want.
Perfect. And the second question, Roy, is what grade level was the lovely student we had a chance to see and read her words?
She would be 11 years old, 10 years old.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roy.
Okay. So the question that Marge and I are going to explore in terms of the stories is time. So if you'd like to go to the next slide to see what the students say. This is why do we begin so many stories with once upon a time?
I think that stories begin with once upon a time because stories will instantly tell us that we are not to this discussion. They help us leave the real world behind and step into a story full of surprises. As soon as we hear them, our imagination starts to wake up. We begin to picture different places, characters, and adventures into our minds. It makes us excited to find out where the story will take us.
Thank you. So time shapes us. One of the influences of Challenge Days, time shapes us. So Marge, we've been talking about time a lot in our conversations, but we were talking about how the past shouldn't limit our present or future. And you were going to talk a little bit more about how stories come from experience. Like, once upon a time, you went to Harvard, for example.
Well, the tagline on that is once upon a time, I went to Harvard with no undergraduate degree.
Okay.
And in the past, that was pretty much unheard of. So it was a barrier not to have an undergraduate degree. And the thing about barriers is that it's an opportunity to put a window into a situation. You can't go through it, but you certainly can go around it and over it and under it. Let's change that slide, okay? Thank you. All right, I'm not quite clear what's happening, but I will continue. In thinking about stories, the question of acceptance or flexibility are very important to the stories, and certainly to my story. Certainly going into a graduate level program at Harvard University, big deal, was scary. I wasn't scared getting in. I went through another window. This one didn't work, that one did. But when I first had to write a paper, I was terrified. And I had a friend who was on the faculty, and it wasn't that she encouraged me. It was that she believed in me. She knew I could do it. I didn't know I could do it, but she knew that I could do it. So the story in my story, I'm sorry, the story in my story is not at all about Harvard. It's about stepping stones. And
Okay.
it's about how one door opens and that door opens another door. I got a PhD. That allowed me to be an academic. That allowed me to write. That allowed me to run a business. That it was like stepping stones. So the moral of my story, I'd love to know what you think the moral of my story is, and put it in if you think of it. Is it don't give up, or you never know, or it ain't over till it's over? But I know there's a moral of my story, and maybe you know it better than I.
I think the thing that comes up for me is having someone in your corner, having
Wait a
someone in
minute.
having
Uh,
someone in your corner fighting for you,
yes, yes.
someone who believes in you more than you believe in yourself.
Well, yes, yes. And now I'm hearing it like Cinderella, because the fairy godmother sees that there can be a coach and a ball gown and so on and so forth. And it is the fairy godmother's vision. So I hadn't thought about B. Miller as a fairy godmother, but she is.
There's some really lovely comments coming up in the chat. Please do keep them going. And I think we have so many brilliant people here who are fighting for other people's stories. And Kristen, I'm sorry to drag you into this, but I'm going to, because of Kristen is a remarkable person. And could you tell us where you're based? Because she's in America. And tell us what you're up to and whose stories are you championing at the moment, Kristen? Do you mind me asking?
Oh, thank you so much, Roy. Apologies, because I'm kind of on the road right now. So I was just diving in for this. So there's probably a lot of background noise, and I'm sitting here in a baseball cap. But I'm in New York right now, but I generally live overseas. I know Roy from my PhD work at Cambridge. And so while I was at Cambridge, I started a profit, and we focus on survivors of violence, and actually right now using narrative form. So we use narrative as at once an intervention. So working with folks around mental health intervention, compassion, self-compassion, that kind of thing. And at the same time, we're generating data together that we then use in various forms of policymaking. So there's always a call for bringing voices to the table, particularly in policy contexts, depending on what we're talking about. We work mainly in crisis zones. And we're doing it. We've been doing it for close to 20 years. So continuously championing and uplifting people's voices, lived experiences, and more than that, really focusing on other folks as the leaders in sharing their own stories and the ways in which we can do that. So I'm actually here in New York, and I'll just finish with this. We just got a small fund from New York City Pride Gives Back, and we're using the work that we do in Ukraine, which is where we've built an information sharing system based on people's narratives and stories and the work that they need. They're actually running the information that they need. We're bringing it to New York City, and we're building it right now with the trans community here that is in facing a double precarity. So they've had to escape authoritarian regimes, and now they are here, and many of them are being picked up by ICE and facing really very dire consequences. So thank you, Roy. Thank you for all you all do. This is incredible.
I couldn't not get you to come in and have a quick chat because you are doing in terms of championing people's stories and not allowing other people to stop people being the best version of ourselves. Because in terms of the storytelling, the starting point is, what's your story? What's your story? Do you have a story to tell? Is there anyone in the group that would like to add to this to start before we move on to our next bit, the importance of Laura? Yeah.
Yeah, Roy, and thanks for asking that question. One of the things that inspired me, we touched briefly on the fact that this call, we are the Positive Education Consortium. And the creation of this group was, we joke that Marty Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, was our muse. And when we talked about, as individual practitioners, positive education practitioners, we were saying, this is hard work. This is, it's hard to build momentum. Marty's encouragement was, get the voices of the students who are benefiting from positive education, elevate those voices, elevate their stories. So I love that you all are leaning into the power of story, because that was literally the genesis of the entire creation of the Positive Education Consortium. So it feels very full circle in that regard.
We love a circle. We love a circle. Because of time, and I want to get to the next part of our conversation, is Nora, let me just have a look at what the students have to say about how have the become skills. This is to your point, Laura. We asked children, how has the become skills of positive psychology helped you overcome obstacles inside and outside school? But we started off with, why do so many stories have similar characters? And this is what this young woman said.
Hi, it's deep and clear in the head. The hero part of us wants to be brave and be life. The villain is just a person who gets into life. The helper of teachers is the person who helps us understand what to do. These characters are like heroes. When we recognize them in the story, we recognize something from our own lives. That's what makes a story feel true when it's completely.
And one of the key points of storytelling is introducing children, particularly as they move to this next level, into relationships. Being with people who don't see the world like them. And again, having Kristen on the call is particularly insightful. How do you work with people who don't see the world like you, feel like you, have your cultural one? If you go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm having trouble. I'll just
okay.
stop sharing and I'll share again.
That's okay. And so what Marge and I, in terms of our next part of our conversation, is the idea of, why do we have the same? Why do we introduce children in stories to these very, very different characters? Why do we, how will this help us being in the world by introducing to different characters? And Marge, we were talking yesterday about not just by storytelling, but story listening. And you have written this with your grandchildren, is that right, Marge?
That's right, who are about the same age in the picture you see of them as the young people that you've shown us, which is very nice. Okay, so my field for, I guess, the last 30 years is called Appreciative Inquiry, and it is it fits into the positive psychology circle. And I see that a couple of my Appreciative Inquiry friends are on the call, and I appreciate your being here. To talk about a theory that is in action in kindergarten. Everybody is nice to one another. You take a nap. The teacher says, wow, that was good. And everybody is your friend. And you get cookies or graham crackers. Don't get better than that. I began to feel that how do we take it from kindergarten? And I don't know about you, but as we moved into the first and second grade, it wasn't so much fun. And by the time we got a little further, it was fairly threatening every once in a while.
Yeah.
So at that point, I decided I wanted a book for children on appreciative inquiry, to take it from early readers into the future. And as Roy was saying, number one is if you want to have a book for children, don't you involve children? I've been going to a lot of conferences which were aimed at educators and would have a children's chorus or the children's group that would report to the grown-ups. And this was not, this was separate and not equal, actually. So with my grandchildren, we started to write a book. Now, Stan in the book is my grandson, Max, because he would say, no, nobody would say that, we say this. And Stan's best friend was his twin sister, Sarah, my two grandchildren. In the book, I now recognize I become Nona. And in the book, just as we saw in the slide from the children you showed us, there was a school teacher who made things happen. And there was a principal. And it is the principal who recognizes the talents of the children. I don't have to go into the story itself, because what I want to tell you is this book will be free to you. Book will have a PDF, and you are very welcome to take it and use it, and we can talk more about that at another time. The theory of appreciative inquiry is pretty straightforward and works for kids. The first issue is a power. What is the power? It's me power. Martin Seligman says, what are you a natural at doing? And what you're a natural at doing is your me power. So we get that. Strengths, competencies, me power. C power is the vision of the future that I want, what I want to have happen. What is the preferred future? That's C power. I got an idea. No, remember, kids, I got an idea. We power is what we've been talking about since positive education began, and that is community working together, teams, sharing strengths, etc. And finally, do power is action. That means that we actually have to do something. So often, those of us who love words and books love to talk about stuff. No, I'm tired now. I don't want to do that anymore. So do power is the fourth column upon which appreciative inquiry is based. Me power, C power, we power, and do power. And it's all in this little book. It's not too hard. So I guess that's what I want to tell you about the book, except to tell you that it's had a real effect on my children, on my grandchildren.
I think Gina's just put something in. Gina, do you want to say what you've just written, or shall I just read it out?
You can go ahead and read it.
I think you've come to a really important point. But now you're speaking. AI that she said we used to be able to refer to appreciative inquiry as AI, not anymore. And I think we have to reclaim AI. I really think we have to reclaim AI, because when we work with the students, and if you go to the next slide, Nora.
Well, before we let that one go,
Okay.
let me say that AI and AI need to coexist. I don't want to reclaim something where there is a reality that we need to deal with. And the question is how to do it.
And I see that and I raise it. I think we have to have 4 AIs. I'll be bringing the number 4 in regularly during the course of this conversation, people. We need to have artificial intelligence. We need to have appreciative inquiry. And the children, they use this. They use what you see on here is the learning line. The one in the next video, they reference this. And the reason why I mention this is you just introduced it beautifully. We didn't even plan this. The process on a weekly basis of our POS Ed experience with the children, every classroom has a learning line. and to show the process of change and transformation. And we move from knowing, and then during the course of the week, we do. So it's back to your point, knowing one thing is one thing, but doing and understanding the process, not just the outcomes. And again, this is Carol to X there can be. So what this is, and by the way, this is a freebie. If anybody would like this, it's one of the most powerful AI tools because this is active imagination. Around it, it has the story of the 5 stages of the hero's journey. Call to adventure, accept the call, crossing the threshold, the path to trials, return with the elixir. It has the 4 core questions we need to be asking. What, why, who, and how. And in it, at the beginning of the week, we have a peace circle. We focus on one of the values of bravery or energy and say, let's be conscious of this week. And what are you going to do? And what do you need to keep? What do you need to develop? What do you need to let go? And they write it down. They fold it up. They put it on here. They put it on a table. And they check in on a Monday. They check up on a Wednesday. They check out on a Friday. And in schools where we've used this model, not necessarily with this, particularly with the inner city secondary schools in Leeds, we have reduced exclusions in schools to 0 in 7 years. And let me just, this is in an inner city state school where you give children a space to come in, listen to their stories, tell their stories, check in with each other and check out, will reduce violence and conflict. And we use that, the third AI. And the fourth AI is audacious intelligence. It's audacious intelligence, which means I am going to, Marge reference this, I need to bring in my practical skills, my creative skills, my intellectual skills, and my spiritual skills. And I know which one to do at which time. So
Roy,
let's see. Yes, yes.
before you let that one go,
Yeah, sure.
I hadn't heard you say audacious intelligence, but what that encompasses is learning differences. And
Yeah.
what that encompasses is the gifts as well as the challenges of those of us who are learning diverse, me being one. So I appreciate that very, very much because we are seeing the ups and downs of neurodivergence in new ways and different ways. Audacious, great word.
The students, we did a pilot of the peace curriculum with my colleagues in Cambridge with a school in Birmingham. And it's a very large inner city school in Birmingham. And a whole section of it is dedicated for children with additional educational needs. And we insisted that they had to be part of the process. I won't go through the process now but basically we recruit peace ambassadors within the staff and within the pupils, and the children from the additional educational needs were outstanding in terms of shaping a peace movement that was now impacting Birmingham, but also now impacting the peace education culture in Kazakhstan. But that is another story.
Roy, don't let that one go either, because it's also about additional educational experiences, opportunities, and strengths.
Okay, I'm going to write that down, Marge, and we're going to refer to that.
I know,
Good.
So,
peer-to-peer learning. And Roy, if I could go back, because one of the things I want to make sure that we really connect the dots, because you use the language exclusions, which I think in the States, that's an out-of-school suspension. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so again, I'd like to underscore that just, in case that link wasn't clearly made, that at this school in Leeds, they went to 0 out-of-school suspensions, in a school that had previously. Do you have any data from like what,
What I'll do
OSS days were before?
Yeah, we do. What I'll do, I'll put a link to the school because it's now part of the Leeds Learning Alliance. In fact, we have someone on the call who is from Leeds. Now, it's not from the school, but he is involved. In fact, I'll let him introduce himself in a second. He is involved in a community project to involve the school. And actually, Rosina is also on the call. And they're now doing this project together, we hope, over the coming months, where children who are excluded and children with additional educational needs on a Friday afternoon will go into a public park to build something for the community and use the skills. In fact, let's just come out of the slides for a second, please, Nora. And can we just invite Rosina and Stuart just to chip in for a second? Rosina, could you tell us a bit more about the Da Vinci Life Schools? And Stuart can chip in about the project there.
Okay. My brain keeps thinking about from what the storytelling and because I spent all day writing a whole storytelling project. So to leap to the park design project is kind of my it's like I was just feeling that the whole synchronicity because we're basically building project-based learning. So we're taking we mapped the UK national curriculum and we have been embedding it into real world projects. So which is now being piloted in lots of schools globally. And so yeah, it's really exciting. And we've got a skills-based assessment framework that we've also built. So we are looking at how education could be more inclusive and a bit more sustainable and ethical. We're currently fighting against the idea that you can fail. I mean, it's designed in the UK to fail a third of students, particularly at 16. We have a GCSE exam at 16, which is designed to fail a third. They move the grade boundaries to always fail a third of students. So if our major rite of passage through into adulthood is designed to fail a third, I think is unethical. And it's a very narrow band of success too, because you have to be able to sit a written exam, and that doesn't nearly cover the plethora of different abilities and interests and skills that are needed in jobs as well. So the project, one of our pathways talking about storytelling is a multiverse games pathway, and one of the projects I've been writing today is how to use role play games. It links to Zach, my co-founder's work. We use role play games and storytelling, and what is amazing is the students get to design characters and they build worlds and build stories and they lead each other in a game. But that's all about being able to use a story through play and through finding out what your character is. And if you want to play the barbarian warrior, then you can, and you can see what that feels like in a safe environment. So we go deep dive into creative writing and storytelling in a game setting. And the project that we're looking to do with Stuart is more in our enterprise pathway, which is a design pathway. So we do lots of things like product design and interior design and mechanics and robotics and all sorts of things like that. And the one we were looking at with Stuart and Roy is to design a sculpture or a monument within a park, in a city park, and using geometry and looking at the history of mathematics and spirituality and that connection between those origins of science, and looking at astrology and the Platonic solids and sacred geometry and all of those things, and how those are the origins of mathematics and how that has developed. So using pattern and geometry to build a sculpture that is meaningful within a park.
So I think that for me, I'd love Stuart to jump in. The idea that storytelling and art is some kind a lesser in our education system is so wrong, and it's about returning to that. So Stuart, thank you so much for joining the call from your van somewhere in a location in the UK.
Yes. Oh, hello. Hi. Thanks, everybody. Yes, I am in my camper van next to a very posh public park space, not in inner city Leeds. But the project, I'm going to try and spool back, but not too far. So I started working in a community support centre, trained therapist 2 years ago, and my job was to put together a um, um, a counselling service. The area that I'm working in is an area of intense poverty. And where I was thinking, where this kind of very neatly fits in with the idea of storytelling, I think generally the people that we work with, the people that we serve, the people that we're trying to bring justice to, are generally people that don't believe that they belong to the main story. They believe that there's a story going on outside of their worlds that they just don't have part in. So the work that we're trying to do, given that everything we do is free, is trying to find a way of giving life again and reimagining what is a public park space that's been largely abandoned by the local council. So it's an ideal platform for us to work out how we can creatively use the environmental skills and the environment and climate to create worth for people, how people can find worth. Because if they can find worth, then they feel like that they are a character that can play a part in a story, that their story, their own story, has a value. So that's in a nutshell. We're working with local secondary schools and junior schools, and meeting Roy again. We were childhood friends. The absolutely the synchronicity in the paths that we've been following has been quite extraordinary over the years. And what really chimes with me is the idea. The fact is, what are values if you don't use them? So what we're doing with the school children is we are trying to find roots into them feeling pride in their community through teamwork, and then as a member of that team, where are the leaders? Where are the leaders? So that's essentially what we're doing. It's trying to reimagine a park space to make it relevant again. That doesn't just include metalwork, slides and roundabouts. That's what we're up to.
Stuart, what is mind-blowing is the Stan book, The Do Power Becomes Building a Park. That's what the children
look, I love it when I love it when a bit of synchronicity occurs. That's how we roll. Stuart, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speak.
No, thank you for turning up. Let's move on, just because we've got the last 20 minutes. So Nora, thank you very much for the slide. So let's the question that we ask the students is, how do the Become values help you in your school? And this is the library that we help build for them.
Sometimes for bravery, energy, creativity, openness, motivation, and empowerment. These are important because when we are struggling, the word motivation, it keeps us motivated and lets us achieve our goals. We at St. Margaret's, we put 100% effort in everything. At St. Margaret's, we use these words in worship even when we are talking to our friends at lunch. These are important because when we are at the start of the learning line, we need bravery or energy maybe to help us go up the line when we want to achieve a goal. These words have taught me to keep motivated, try again when things are hard, and to never give up.
Excellent. I was speaking to the head teacher today. Do go to the next slide, please, Nora. I was going to the head teacher today, and he said it kind of looks as if they've been directed. He said they haven't. They wrote those things, and they are reading them out themselves. So they did that entirely, just highlighting there was no adult intervention in the construction of those videos. So so as we're moving into the last part of this, in terms of the stories that we tell and the stories we remember. So we're going to play a little quiz. And the first quiz is Spot Marge. Let's play Spot Marge. Anyone see where Marge is? Can you spot her? Okay, Nora, let's reveal Marge. So Marge, this was taken in the 60s sometime. Is it Central Park?
Oh, no, that's Cambridge. Massachusetts.
Cambridge. Okay. So so you'd organized an arts event and you'd brought this young artist, up and coming artist. Can anyone kind of guess, thanks Nora, who the artist is? Can anyone see the artist? No. Yeah, well done, Tracy.
Yeah.
That was it's
Tracy and
Yoko.
Gina
Yeah,
has it. Yeah.
Yoko. And she brought her
Amy's ahead
skinny.
of you there, Roy.
Oh my gosh, they got it. Okay. And she brought her skinny Brit boyfriend down and said that's John. And Marge, what was interesting about this photograph we talked about is that all the women are having a conversation with you and with Yoko, and the only person kind of having a bit of a bromance is the only other bloke in the photograph who's a bit in love with John Lennon. I'm just putting it out there. So in terms of the idea of creating a story and creating spaces for people to tell their stories, that this physical spaces that Rosina does and what Stuart's involved with and that you have you got any thoughts on that, Marge, in terms of creating the space?
Absolutely, because stories have chapters, and it is the chapters of this story that are significant.
Yeah.
In the in the in the 60s, I was very much an activist. I worked in political stuff, anti-war, feminism, etc., racism, sexism, you name it, I was there. And what happened was I was part of a group called Women Involved, and six of us started a business, and we said, we're women, we want to get involved. One of our friends was the dean of students at Lesley College, which was a women's college in Cambridge. And we noodled together and decided what we wanted to do was have an international feminist conference. And it was the first international feminist conference. Who knew? You know, it was amazing. We had about 300 people from all over the world. And as we were putting together our program, what I wanted to do is have someone who had a well-known name come. And I was able to get to Yoko Ono mostly because of past political conversations. And she agreed to come. And this was absolutely wonderful. And we were all delighted that she was coming. We're also delighted that she was from another country. And when I met her at the hotel where we had booked a room for her. And I walked in and there was John Lennon. He had not been invited. I was a little bit surprised. I believe that he came in large measure to support her because he did not talk. He had a camera the whole time and he was walking around taking pictures. It was a wonderful conference, except for the last day, which was horrible. I went to say goodbye. Oh, I forgot to tell you one part. During that time, I was the commentator every Friday for an NBC Boston affiliate talk show. And I did the women's stuff. In other words, we had 4 days for the men's, I guess, and 1 day for the women's, and that was my responsibility. And I wanted Yoko invited because I thought how wonderful that a headliner on the International Women's Conference, we could talk about what had happened. And the producer said, well, I don't want her. I want John. And I said, John won't come. And she said, well, the producer then said, we'll invite both of them. And I said, they're not going to come. And here's an aside on personal growth. Why didn't I say, if you want them?
Being recorded, Marge, so watch your language.
Oh, no, actually, I'm from Boston, excuse me. No, I wouldn't. I would have said, if you want him to come or them to come, why don't you invite them? but I didn't have the strength of conviction or character at that point in my life to say no. Learning to say no is a big deal in our stories. There are a lot of good stories that have a place of no. Stop and think of those stories. Anyhow, to go back to what happened, they both refused. Last day of the session, I go to say thank you. And what happened, we seem to have two voices.
Okay, Heather's just joined us. It's okay.
Oh, okay, nice. What happened was I went to the hotel and they told me that I had never wanted Yoko. I had only wanted John, and that I was a bad person, and this was a bad thing that I had done to them. And I was devastated. Most of us, I guess, at some point in our lives have been accused of something we didn't do. Well, this was a tough one. Okay, fast forward. I am now at a retreat, a peaceful retreat with people from all over the world in upstate New York. And one of the women is from Iceland, and she tells this story of her friend from Reykjavik who had been front page news about something she had never done. And then I don't know if you've ever been at a retreat where they have these cute little cards and they have a word on them. And the word on my card was imagine. So I walked up to this woman and I said, I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel the same story. And I got this card and I tell her the story. And she says to me, do you know where I'm going tonight, Marge? And I said, no. And she said, I'm going to the Dakota apartment building to spend the night with Yoko. And I said, tell her Marge said hi. So there are chapters in our story, and don't think you've reached the last chapter because you just might not have.
I find that personally very moving, and I know without sharing too much, you've been an immense help to me over the past few years in terms of dealing with other people who tell your story, other people who think they know and they tell your story. It's getting very Hamilton at the moment, by the way. So I'm just recognizing that.
Yeah.
You've got to be in the room where it happens. How many titles can you come up with? But as we move into these last eight minutes, I think it would be good if we just finished off with some final thoughts from the students, because it is actually about what do we do with this? Where do we go with this? What do we do with this? And how can we move it? So I just wanted to thank the students. This is Mr. Whittle, Mr. Dan Whittle from the North, with some of the students that made the videos. And if you go to the next slide, Nora, before we finish, this is some advice from this remarkable young woman for schools wanting to use the principles and practices of positive psychology in how to become a become school.
My advice for schools thinking to become a become school would be to focus on building strong relationships first. When pupils, teachers, and families trust each other, it creates a happier environment where everyone feels safe and supported. The become values helps us guide us in how we treat others every day.
Thank you. And so if you come out the slides for a second, please, Nora. I know you're a late arrival, Heather Davies, but if you we're doing a project at the moment. Do you want to just talk about the project we did a couple of weeks ago in Sharjah, in terms of the stories we've been using there? We've been using Romeo and Juliet to explore the four quadrants, another four people, of the restorative justice. And Heather and I are involved in a project in the UAE at the moment.
Yeah, so we just make sure you can hear me, yes?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it was absolutely fantastic. Roy and I did a hybrid workshop exploring restorative justice and looking at the conflict archetypes through the characters of Romeo and Juliet. And we did that with 9 students from where I'm working, which is now the University of the Arts, Sharjah. So it's theater makers who are adults, again, anywhere between the ages of 24 and 35. So, and
they're all training to be arts leaders in the region. So exploring conflict management and conflict archetypes with them, they found it incredibly rich in terms of the connection that they made with it. They instantly recognized themselves in those archetypes. And it's still being talked about, Roy, I just wanted to let you know, it's still being discussed. And they really want the slide decks. So it's
They can have the slide decks.
I know, they really want them, and and so we're also linking this into an Arabic translation of a piece that goes along with this work called "The Missing Piece," and I'm looking forward to working with one of our now graduate MFA students on translating "The Missing Piece" into Arabic for co-delivery in English and Arabic, and we're literally going to have a meeting in the next couple of weeks to talk about co-delivery of that with Roy.
Lovely.
Thank you.
And this is the same program, Sandy, that we're hoping to do with Russell Sage. And the launch of the Become, and I'm going to hand over to Sandy now just to wind up. The launch of the Become programs began with Rosina and I in the Cambridge Union doing the 60th anniversary of the Baldwin-Buckley debate, where we showed the film of The Missing Piece, which is a piece that I've written with another American colleague, based upon the Baldwin-Buckley debate about having a voice, about being seen. And we're doing this 10,000 Voices campaign. And some of the students, Heather, if I'm not wrong, are going to be translating Baldwin's "It is a terrible thing for an entire nation to deny the existence of 1/9 of its population."
Yes.
The last words, and having it translated into Arabic, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. And I have to double check to see who's following up on that. Yes, they've agreed that they'll translate it into Arabic and add it to the 10,000 Voices. Yes.
So we'll put a little link to the 10,000 Voices campaign in the chat if anybody wants to go and have a look at that. There's some free resources. But I'm gonna thank Marge.
Marge wants a last word.
Okay, Marge.
Did Marge have a last word? Yeah.
Sure. Go on, Marge.
I define myself as a professional grandmother because grandmothers tell stories. And this whole time we have been talking about stories. Cannot stay strongly enough that stories need the environment that allows them to flourish and grow. I just realized my doctoral thesis was in learning environments for management and public policy. What I've heard in this call is people who are developing learning environments that allow stories to flow and grow. And we are the intergenerational couple. Roy is younger than my children.
I just like the sound of that. I just like the fact that someone thinks I'm younger than somebody, because I think I'm older than everybody. So, and thanks, Sandy, and thanks, Laura, and thanks to the rest of this incredible group of people with the PosEd Consortium, who we met in Texas some years ago, and we just kept the dialogue.
2018.
Yeah. So, Sandy, thank you. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Roy. And thank you, everybody. Yes, we are the Positive Education Consortium, and we are applying the Become competencies to our conversations here. And this is the 5th in our series of 6. We have our 6th coming up on Monday, August 3rd, 2026. We will be sending out information, so look out for it. We have Anita Anderson and is accompanied by Shelby O'Brien, who is a 4th grade teacher that Anita has been working with. And they are going to wrap up our 5 conversations, which is in the Become model: bravery, energy, creativity, openness, and motivation. So we are going to wrap it up with empowerment. It's a capstone conversation that's going to integrate the learning, celebrate the progress, and empower very meaningful action moving forward. So Anita is going to kind of give us a whole wrap up of what we have been talking about, as well as a beautiful example of the work that she has been doing with Shelby in a local school district, which is really exciting. Beautiful example. So thank you all so much. We enjoyed having you. We enjoyed the stories. We enjoyed the conversation. Very, very meaningful. And you are all appreciated very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Marge.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.